Bruce Downey's fingers found my chin in a room full of witnesses and enemies, tilting my face toward his with the kind of gentleness that made you forget he was the most feared man in Chicago, until you remembered why he needed me to play his wife in the first place. The birthday party my ex-husband had destroyed, the 24 empty chairs, the cameras recording from every angle, the whispered threat that my 7-year-old daughter was leverage now whether I wanted her to be or not. It all led to this moment where a mafia boss offered protection that felt like a noose tightening, and the only way out was to lean in and let him kiss me like he meant it. I said yes, and everything that came after was blood, chess pieces, and promises neither of us knew how to keep. Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. If you're hooked in, and you're ready to enjoy this story, click subscribe and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, because tomorrow I will be giving you another story just as interesting as this one, and you don't want to miss it. Now let us begin. The banner above the dessert table said, "Happy 7th birthday. Nora," in letters I'd cut from craft paper at 11 o'clock last night. The balloons were pastel, because my daughter loved soft colors, the kind that didn't demand attention, and because the party supply store marked them down to $3 a bundle if you bought after closing. I'd worn the burgundy dress because Nora called it my princess work dress, and said it made me look like someone who didn't have to be scared all the time. I'd booked the smallest private room at the riverfront restaurant, the one they usually reserved for corporate lunches and anniversary dinners. It had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River, white tablecloths that actually felt expensive, and soft recessed lighting that made even the cheap decorations look intentional. 24 place settings, because Nora's first-grade class had 22 students, and I'd added 2 extras for the teacher and the classroom aide who'd been kind to my girl on the hard days. The excuses started arriving at 2:30. Text after text lighting up my phone while I arranged napkins and tied ribbons to the backs of chairs. So sorry. Emma has a cold. Baseball practice ran long, won't make it. Family emergency, rain check. By 5 o'clock, the messages stopped altogether. By 6, when the party was supposed to start, the silence told me everything the words hadn't. I still set every place, still folded every napkin, still arranged the thrift store party favors and the supermarket cupcakes in neat rows, because giving up felt like admitting something I wasn't ready to admit. Hope is a muscle, my mother used to say before she stopped calling. If you don't use it, it atrophies. Mine was cramping, but it hadn't quit yet. That's when I noticed them. 2 men in gray jackets, sitting at the bar visible through the room's open doorway. They weren't drinking, weren't talking to each other. They were holding their phones at strange angles, cameras pointed into our pathetic little party room, recording the empty chairs and the woman in burgundy who'd dressed up for humiliation. On my side of the room, closer to the cake table, 3 of my ex-husband's cousins had claimed a corner. I recognized Joel, the one who always smelled like cigarettes and entitlement, flanked by 2 others whose names I'd never bothered to learn. They were recording, too, phones out, whispering and snickering like this was dinner theater and I was the joke. The restaurant's ambient music played something soft and forgettable. The air conditioning made the balloon strings tremble. The candles on Nora's cake remained unlit because she was still in the bathroom, trying to scrub blue frosting off her cheeks after taste testing, while I'd been setting up. I'd left work 3 hours early for this. Begged my supervisor at the bakery to let me swap shifts. Spent money I didn't have on a room I couldn't afford, all because Nora had asked, pleaded, for a real party this year. Last year we'd done cake in our apartment with just the 2 of us. The year before that, I'd been so deep in post-divorce depression I'd barely managed candles and a card. This year was supposed to be different. This year I was going to prove we were okay, that being a single mom didn't mean my daughter had to sit alone on her birthday. Instead, I'd proven exactly what my ex-husband Trent had been telling anyone who'd listen, that I was barely holding on, that nobody wanted to associate with me, that leaving me had been the smartest decision he'd ever made. He'd texted me at 4:30, right around the time the excuses were piling up. Heard the party's a bust. Should have asked me for help planning. People would have come if someone competent was organizing. I hadn't responded. Responding gave him power, and I'd learned that lesson the hard way during the divorce. Now I sat at the head of the empty table, hands folded in my lap to keep them from shaking, trying to figure out how to tell my 7-year-old that sometimes the world just decides you're not worth showing up for. That's when he appeared. Bruce Downey moved through the restaurant like water through glass. Smooth, inevitable, impossible to ignore. He was tall, maybe 6'1", with the kind of athletic build that suggested discipline rather than vanity. His suit was deep forest green, the exact color of old money and new threats, paired with a crisp white shirt open at the collar. A slim gold chain caught the light at his throat. A brown leather watch circled his wrist. Dark hair, close-cropped, trimmed stubble that framed a jaw you could break your heart on. But it was his eyes that stopped my breath. Even from across the room, I could see them calculating, assessing, knowing. He wasn't rushing. Men who own rooms never do. He crossed the space between the main dining area and our pathetic party alcove with the kind of confidence that didn't ask permission or offer apologies. The men at the bar straightened slightly when he passed. The cousins in the corner stopped recording. He reached my table, stood there for a moment, taking in the empty chairs, the unlit candles, the woman who'd dressed too nicely for abandonment. Then he sat down beside me without asking. Close enough that his shoulder nearly brushed mine. Close enough that I could smell him. Cedar. Something darker. Something expensive. His hand came to rest at the small of my back. Not grabbing. Not demanding. Just there. Warm through the thin fabric of my dress. Steadying. "You're doing your best to look fine," he said quietly, voice low enough that only I could hear. "You're not." My throat closed. I couldn't form words. Couldn't think past the weight of his hand and the way he was looking at me like I was a problem he intended to solve. "Those men at the bar," he continued, nodding subtly toward the gray jackets. "They're not here for the food. And your friends in the corner." His gaze slid toward Joel and his companions. "They're not here for the birthday." "I know," I managed, voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what to do about it." "You don't have to do anything." His fingers pressed slightly more firmly against my back. "But I do. Those men at the bar work for someone who wants leverage on me. Your relatives work for your ex-husband who wants to humiliate you. We're both being hunted." His eyes met mine, amber and utterly calm. "So let me offer you a solution." "What kind of solution?" "They stop filming when a wife appears." He said it like he was discussing the weather, like this was the most reasonable thing in the world. "When I claim you publicly, the men at the bar lose their angle. When I sit at your daughter's birthday table like I belong here, your ex's family loses their story." I should have laughed in his face, should have stood up, grabbed Nora, and walked out of this nightmare. Instead, I heard myself ask, "Why would you help me?" "Because civilians, especially children, don't belong in my world, and because someone decided to use your daughter's birthday as bait to draw me out." Something dangerous flickered behind his calm expression. "That breaks my rules." "I don't understand." "You don't have to, not yet." He leaned in, voice dropping even lower, breath warm against my ear. "Pretend you're my wife, and kiss me. One moment and everyone in this room will understand she's under my protection." The cameras at the bar, the phones in the corner, the empty chairs, the unlit candles, my daughter in the bathroom, 7 years old and still believing that parties were supposed to be magic. I thought about all the times I'd said yes when I should have said no. All the times I'd trusted the wrong person, believed the wrong promises. This felt different. This felt like choosing instead of surrendering. "Okay," I whispered. His hand moved from my back to my chin, fingertips gentle against my jaw, tilting my face toward his. Not a demand. A question posed at the hinge of bone and breath. The room held still. The men at the bar lowered their phones. Joel and his cousins froze mid-whisper. Bruce Downey's mouth hovered a heartbeat from mine, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, the absolute control in the way he held himself back, waiting for my permission even though I'd already given it. The candles on Nora's cake whooshed to life, someone from the kitchen staff probably, trying to salvage the moment. The sudden light made the room glow, made everything feel staged and surreal. And then Nora burst through the bathroom door, hands clean, cheeks frosting free, eyes bright and wide as she took in the scene. "Mommy, the candles are lit. Did people come? Are they hiding?" Bruce pulled back smoothly, hand dropping from my chin to rest on the table, like nothing earth-shattering had almost happened. He turned toward my daughter with a smile that transformed his entire face, from dangerous to warm. "Not hiding," he said easily. "Just running late. But I made it, and I brought the most important thing." He gestured toward the towering cake that a server was wheeling, in 3 tiers, professionally decorated, covered in pastel buttercream and sugar flowers. "Happy birthday, Nora." My daughter's jaw dropped. So did mine. "You'll want to leave through the kitchen," Bruce said quietly, standing and offering me his hand. "My car is waiting in the back alley. Your apartment isn't safe tonight. Neither is staying here." His expression was apologetic but unyielding. "I'm sorry. This isn't how protection usually starts. But your ex-husband made a deal with the wrong people, and your daughter's party was the trap they set for me." Nora was already racing toward the massive cake, 7-year-old joy obliterating any questions about why a stranger had brought it. I looked at Bruce Downey, at his steady hand, his expensive suit, his eyes that promised both danger and safety in equal measure. "Who are you?" I asked. "Someone who doesn't let children get hurt in my city," he answered. "And someone who just made you my wife in front of witnesses who matter. Which means as of 30 seconds ago, you and Nora are under the Downey family's protection." He squeezed my hand gently. "Now we need to move. Questions later. Safety first." The men at the bar were already gone. Joel and his cousins were scrambling toward the exit, phones clutched like shields. And I, Edna Kernett, single mother who scraped by on bakery shifts and side gigs, who'd thrown a birthday party that nobody attended, took the hand of a man whose last name I'd just learned and let him lead me and my daughter through the kitchen, past the surprised staff, and into whatever came next. Because sometimes, hope isn't a muscle you exercise. Sometimes it's a man in a forest green suit who sees you drowning and offers you air, even if that air comes wrapped in danger and pretend kisses and protection you never asked for, but desperately need. The black SUV was exactly where he said it would be. A woman with sharp eyes and sharper posture stood beside the open door. "This is Marta Vega," Bruce said as Nora climbed into the back seat, still clutching a piece of the massive cake. "She's head of my security. She'll keep you safe while I handle the cleanup." "Cleanup?" I echoed. He smiled, and it wasn't warm anymore. "The people who decided your daughter's birthday was an acceptable hunting ground are about to learn what happens when they break my rules." Then he handed me into the SUV beside Nora, closed the door with a finality that felt like a promise and a threat, and disappeared back into the restaurant where 24 empty chairs waited in the candlelight. The SUV pulled away from the curb, and Nora pressed her face against the window, watching the restaurant lights fade into the Chicago evening. I should have been terrified. Should have demanded answers. Instead, I found myself thinking about the last time someone had protected me, which was never, not really. Not since my mother died, and my father checked out, and Trent walked away the day the pregnancy test came, back positive. Protection was something other people had. People with family money and stable lives and birthday parties where guests actually showed up. Not people like me. The SUV smelled like leather and something antiseptic. Like violence had been scrubbed away, but memory lingered in the molecules. Marta drove with the efficiency of someone who'd spent years calculating threat vectors and exit routes. She didn't speak. Didn't turn on the radio. Just navigated Chicago's evening traffic with the same cold precision I imagined she applied to everything else. Nora, oblivious to the tension radiating from every adult surface in the vehicle, had smeared buttercream across her cheek and was narrating her own version of events. So the man in the green jacket. Suit, I corrected automatically. The man in the green suit, Nora continued, undeterred, brought me a cake that's taller than me, which means he's probably a wizard or a really good friend, and you were going to kiss him. But then I came back. So does that mean he's my new dad, or… Nora. My voice came out sharper than I intended. We don't know him. He was just… being kind. Kind people don't usually bring 3-tier cakes to parties where nobody shows up, Marta said from the driver's seat, eyes never leaving the road. Kind people bring apologies and casseroles. Mr. Downey brings solutions. Solutions that involve kidnapping? Protection. Marta took a left turn that pressed us gently against the door. There's a difference. You'll learn it. Nora had already moved on, nose pressed against the window, watching the city lights blur into ribbons of gold and red. Are we going on an adventure? Something like that, I murmured, though my hands were shaking in my lap, and my heart was trying to exit through my throat. 20 minutes ago, I'd been sitting at my daughter's abandoned birthday party. Now I was in an armored SUV with a woman who spoke about violence like it was a second language, heading toward an unknown destination, because a stranger in an expensive suit had claimed me as his wife in front of witnesses who apparently mattered. The rational part of my brain, the part that had survived a brutal divorce and single parenthood, was screaming at me to demand Marta stop the car, to grab Nora and run, to go to the police, file a report, disappear into whatever services existed for women fleeing dangerous men. But the other part, the part that had watched those men filming at the bar, that had seen Joel's smug face recording my humiliation, that had read Trent's cruel text and knew something worse was coming. That part whispered that maybe Bruce Downey's protection was the only thing standing between us and something I didn't have the framework to fight. Where are we going? I finally asked. Somewhere safe, Marta replied. Somewhere with sightlines and secure entry points and rooms that lock from the inside. She glanced at me in the rearview mirror. Somewhere your ex-husband's associates can't reach. His associates? We'll let Mr. Downey explain. He prefers to deliver bad news personally. The SUV turned onto a street lined with buildings that cost more per square foot than I made in a year. Glass towers that reflected the city back at itself. All sharp angles and ambient wealth. We pulled into an underground garage beneath one of them, past a security checkpoint that involved cameras and a guard who nodded at Marta like they were old friends. The parking level was pristine, gleaming concrete, soft lighting, cars that probably cost more than my entire life's earnings lined up in designated spots. Marta parked in a space marked private and killed the engine. Penthouse elevator is through that door, she said, pointing. Biometric lock. I'll escort you up, get you settled, then post outside until Mr. Downey arrives. Post outside, I repeated slowly. Like a guard. Exactly like a guard. Marta's expression didn't change. Because that's what I am. Nora was already unbuckling, 7-year-old excitement overriding any sense of danger. Is there a pool? My friend Madison's building has a pool on the roof and… No pool, Marta said, not unkindly. But there's a toy basket and a kitchen stocked with things that aren't good for you, and a view that makes most adults cry the first time they see it. She wasn't wrong about the view. The elevator opened directly into the penthouse. No hallway, no transition, just a seamless entry into a space that seemed designed to make you forget you were still in Chicago. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped 3 sides of the main room, offering a panoramic view of the river and the city skyline beyond. The sun had set, leaving behind streaks of purple and gold that bled into the water below. The interior was all clean lines and expensive restraint. Dark wood floors, low-slung furniture in shades of charcoal and cream, art on the walls that probably cost more than most people's homes. But it wasn't cold. There were books stacked on the coffee table, a throw blanket draped over the back of the sofa, small human touches that suggested someone actually lived here. Nora made a sound like a bird discovering the sky and took off toward the windows, hands pressed against the glass. "Careful," Marta called after her. "Bulletproof doesn't mean indestructible." My stomach dropped. Bulletproof? Standard precaution. Marta moved through the space with the ease of familiarity, checking locks, scanning corners. "The bedroom is down that hall. Second door on the right is set up for children. Mr. Downey keeps it ready for his associates' families when they need accommodation." "This happens often? Women and children needing accommodation?" "More often than you'd think. Less often than it used to." Marta's mouth tightened fractionally. "Mr. Downey has rules. Not everyone in his world shares them." "His world," I echoed. "Which is what, exactly?" "Not my story to tell." She gestured toward the kitchen. "Fridge is stocked. Bathroom has everything you'll need. I'll be in the hallway. Don't open the door for anyone except Mr. Downey or me." "How will I know it's you?" "You'll know." Marta headed back toward the elevator, then paused. "For what it's worth, Mrs. Kernet, you made the right call. Staying at that party would have ended badly. Going home would have ended worse." Then she was gone, the elevator doors closing with a whisper of expensive engineering, and I was alone in a penthouse that cost more per month than I'd earned in my entire life, with my daughter pressed against bulletproof glass, watching a city that suddenly felt full of threats I couldn't name. I moved through the space slowly, cataloging details. The kitchen was immaculate, all stainless steel and marble countertops. The fridge held fresh fruit, expensive cheeses, juice boxes in flavors I'd never heard of. The toy basket Marta had mentioned sat in a corner. Stuffed animals, building blocks, coloring books still wrapped in plastic. Someone had prepared this space for children. Someone had thought about what a scared kid might need. Down the hall, the second bedroom was painted soft lavender. Twin bed with a canopy. Bookshelf stocked with picture books. A nightlight shaped like a crescent moon already glowing in the corner. I stood in the doorway, trying to reconcile this, the thought, the care, the gentleness, with the man who'd whispered, "Pretend you're my wife and kiss me like it was a business transaction." "Mommy," Nora's voice carried from the main room, "there's a boat on the river. Come see." I returned to find her still at the window, pointing at the lights moving along the water below. Her earlier anxiety about the ghosted party had evaporated completely, replaced by the resilient joy only children could manufacture from disaster. "Pretty cool, right?" I managed, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "The best birthday ever," she declared. My throat closed. I'd thrown her a party that nobody attended. We'd been filmed, threatened, bundled into an SUV by a stranger. Now we were hiding in a luxury penthouse with bulletproof windows and a guard posted outside. And my daughter thought it was the best birthday ever. "Baby?" I started, then stopped. How did you explain danger to someone who still believed in magic? "We need to talk about—" The elevator chimed. I pulled Nora behind me instinctively. Heart hammering. Hands already reaching for something, anything, I could use as a weapon. The doors opened. Bruce Downey stepped out, still in the forest green suit but with his collar more open now, the gold chain catching the light. He looked tired. Not physically exhausted, but worn in the way people get when they've had to make decisions that cost pieces of their soul. "You didn't run," he said. It wasn't quite a question. Marta said running would make things worse. Marta's usually right. He moved into the space with that same, unhurried confidence. But there was something heavier about him now. Something that hadn't been there at the restaurant. I owe you an explanation. Several explanations, I corrected, starting with who you are and why my daughter's birthday party became a crime scene. Not a crime scene, not yet. He glanced at Nora, who was watching him with unguarded curiosity. But it could have been. Would have been, if I'd let you leave. Let me? My voice sharpened. You don't get to let me do anything. I'm not your wife. I'm not under your protection. I'm a woman who made a bad decision because I was desperate and embarrassed, and now I'd like to take my daughter and go home. Home isn't safe. That's not your call to make. Actually, Bruce said quietly, it is. He pulled out his phone, tapped the screen twice, then turned it toward me. This was delivered to your apartment 17 minutes ago. The image showed my apartment door, my faded welcome mat, and sitting on top of it, wrapped in black tissue paper, was a small wooden chess piece, a rook. Underneath, a card in heavy script. See you soon, Mrs. Downey. The room tilted. I grabbed the back of the sofa to steady myself. The party boycott wasn't random, Bruce continued, voice flat and factual. Your ex-husband owed money to a man named Rook. Told him I frequented that restaurant. Rook spread lies about the place to empty your party, knowing it would either draw me out or humiliate you enough that you'd look vulnerable. Either way, he won. Trent did this? The words tasted like ash. He sabotaged his own daughter's birthday? To clear a debt and hurt you simultaneously? Yes. Bruce tucked the phone away. I'm sorry. I know that doesn't help. But you need to understand, you and Nora are leveraged now. Rook thinks claiming you was a strategic move on my part. He's right, but not for the reasons he believes. Then why? I demanded. Why claim me at all? His eyes met mine, amber and utterly steady. Because in my world, civilians, especially children, are sacred, and I don't negotiate with people who use 7-year-olds as bait. Nora had fallen asleep an hour ago, curled in the lavender bedroom with her shoes still on, and buttercream still smeared faintly across her cheek. I'd covered her with a blanket that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and stood in the doorway for 5 full minutes, watching her chest rise and fall, trying to convince myself this was real, and not some fever dream born from humiliation and desperation. When I returned to the main room, Bruce was at the kitchen island with his laptop open and his jacket finally discarded. The white shirt underneath was crisp despite everything, sleeves rolled to his elbows. The gold chain caught the light every time he moved. He'd made coffee. 2 cups sat steaming on the counter. I didn't ask if you wanted any, he said without looking up from the screen. But people usually do after the kind of day you've had. I took the cup because my hands needed something to hold that wasn't a weapon or my daughter. The coffee was perfect, dark, strong, no sugar. Exactly how I took it. Lucky guess, I asked. Observation. He finally glanced at me. You drink it black at the bakery. I've seen you there. My stomach dropped. You've been watching me? I've been eating there, he corrected. Your almond croissants are the best in the city. You work the early shift on Tuesdays and Thursdays. You always look tired. You never take breaks. His expression didn't change. I notice things. It's how I stay alive. I set the cup down harder than necessary. That's not comforting. It's not meant to be comforting. It's meant to be honest. He turned the laptop toward me. Your ex-husband's cousin Joel made a cash purchase at a prepaid card kiosk 4 days ago, $300. He used that card to place bulk orders through a catering app, cancellations for your daughter's party, sent from burner accounts to make it look like the parents were backing out. The screen showed timestamps, transaction records, a grainy security photo of Joel's face at a convenience store checkout. How did you get this? My voice came out hollow. I have people who find things. Bruce scrolled down. He also purchased a prepaid phone. That phone sent 23 text messages to a group chat called Nora's Birthday Party Planning, a chat you weren't included in. Would you like to see what he said? I didn't want to see, but I nodded anyway. Bruce pulled up screenshots, messages in a thread I'd never known existed. Unknown number. Hey everyone, heads up about the party venue. Place is under investigation. Health code violations, possibly worse. Might want to skip it. Parent 1. Seriously? That's awful. Should we tell Jessica? Unknown number. She knows. She's just desperate. Didn't want to cancel and lose the deposit. Parent 2. I heard the restaurant has connections to organized crime. My husband works in the DA's office and said to avoid it. Unknown number. Yeah, it's a whole thing. Better to make an excuse than put our kids at risk. The messages went on, each one a carefully placed lie, building on the last, painting me as either dangerously negligent or pitifully unaware. By the end of the thread, 15 parents had agreed not to attend. The remaining 7 simply stopped responding. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think past the roaring in my ears. Joel did this, I whispered. Trent's cousin Joel sabotaged my daughter's birthday party. On Rook's orders, Bruce said. Joel's been feeding him information for 3 months. Where you work, where Nora goes to school, your schedule. Paying off his own gambling debts by selling intel on you. He closed the laptop. Trent set it in motion. Gave Rook your life in exchange for debt forgiveness. Why? The word cracked. Why would he do this to Nora? She's his daughter. Because weak men don't see their children as people. They see them as leverage. Bruce's voice was flat, but fury simmered underneath. And because Rook wanted to draw me out. He knew I ate at that restaurant. Knew I had rules about children. Figured if he orchestrated something cruel enough in my space, I'd either intervene, which would make me look soft, or ignore it, which would make me look complicit. You intervened. I always intervene when children are involved. He met my eyes. That's not strategy. That's who I am. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe that someone in this city gave a damn about protecting the powerless. But belief was expensive, and I'd been bankrupt for years. What happens now? I asked instead. Now we document everything. Bruce pulled a folder from his laptop bag and slid it across the counter. I need you to give me every piece of evidence you have about Trent. Late child support payments, harassing messages, threats. Anything that establishes a pattern of abuse and neglect. I stared at the folder. I keep records. I assumed you did. You're a survivor. Survivor's document. Why do you need them? Because when this goes public, and it will go public, I want the narrative to be accurate. Trent collaborated with a known criminal to sabotage his own daughter's birthday. Joel acted as a paid informant. Rook orchestrated a targeted harassment campaign. Bruce's jaw tightened. But we do this legally. No disappearances, no threats. We bury them with evidence and let the system do its job. The system doesn't do its job, I said bitterly. I've tried the system. The system says Trent's late payments are a civil matter. The system says his messages are communication between co-parents. The system doesn't care. The system cares when I make it care. Bruce's voice didn't rise, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. I have attorneys who specialize in making the system remember its purpose, but I need your evidence first. I thought about the shoebox in my closet. 3 years of printed emails, text screenshots, certified mail receipts showing every late payment, every broken promise. I'd kept it all because some part of me had known that one day I'd need proof that I wasn't crazy, wasn't vindictive, was just a woman trying to protect her child from a man who'd never wanted to be a father. I have it, I said quietly. Everything. Good. Bruce pulled out his phone. I'm sending someone to your apartment now to retrieve it. They'll be discreet. In and out in 5 minutes. You can't just break into my apartment. I'm not breaking in. You're giving permission. He raised an eyebrow. Aren't you? I should have said no. Should have insisted on going myself, on maintaining some shred of control over my own life. But the photo of the rook chess piece on my doormat was burned into my brain, and control was a luxury I couldn't afford anymore. Second shelf of my bedroom closet, I said. Shoebox with a rubber band around it. Bruce typed something, sent the message, then pocketed his phone. Done. They'll have it within the hour. And then what? Then we build a case that buries Trent and Joel so deep they'll need archaeologists to find them. He picked up his coffee, took a long drink. And we make sure Rook understands what it costs to use children as weapons. I don't want violence, I said quickly. Whatever you're planning. I'm not planning violence. I'm planning exposure. Bruce set the cup down with deliberate care. Rook operates in shadows. He bribes city officials, intimidates witnesses, keeps his empire invisible. But when I claim you publicly, when I put the Downey name on you and Nora, I'm dragging everything into the light. He can't touch you without touching me. And if he touches me, every spotlight in Chicago turns his direction. That's what the kiss meant, I said slowly. At the restaurant. Yes. You weren't just being kind. You were marking territory. I was doing both. His eyes held mine. In my world, gestures are contracts. A public claim of protection isn't casual. It's binding. Every person in that room understood what I was saying. Which was that you and Nora are under the Downey umbrella. That anyone who harms you answers to me. That your daughter's safety is now a matter of family honor. He paused. And that I'm willing to go to war over it. The words should have terrified me. Should have sent me running back to my apartment with Nora in my arms, consequences be damned. Instead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Protected. It was dangerous, that feeling. Seductive. The kind of thing that made smart women make catastrophically stupid choices. I want to leave in the morning, I said, testing the boundary. Go back to my life. Figure this out on my own. You can't. Watch me. Edna. My name in his voice was a warning and a plea. Leaving makes you a target. Rook will see it as me withdrawing protection. Every associate he has will know you're vulnerable. And they'll come for Nora to prove a point. You don't know that. I absolutely know that. He pulled out his phone again, swiped twice, then turned the screen toward me. Another photo. My apartment building. A black SUV idling at the curb, tinted windows reflecting streetlights. The timestamp read 18 minutes ago. They're watching your home, Bruce said quietly, waiting to see if you come back, and if you do. His phone buzzed. Another message, another photo. This one showed Nora's elementary school playground, empty. The swings moving slightly in the wind, red and yellow plastic seats catching the security light. No people, no overt threat. Just a message that said, we know where she goes. We know when she's alone. My hands started shaking so hard I had to set the coffee cup down before I dropped it. They sent this to you? My voice barely worked. To a number they think belongs to me. They're testing boundaries, seeing how far they can push before I react. Bruce's expression was carved from stone. This is what Rook does. He doesn't make direct threats. He just shows you what he could do and lets your imagination do the rest. I thought about Nora's morning routine. How she walked to the bus stop with the neighbor's kid. How the playground was visible from the street. How she played there during recess. How I'd always told myself she was safe because teachers were watching, and the school had security protocols and nothing bad could happen in broad daylight. I'd been so catastrophically naive. I can't go home, I heard myself say. No. I can't send her to school. Not yet. I can't. My throat closed. I can't protect her from this. I don't know how. Bruce moved around the counter slowly, giving me time to step back if I wanted to. I didn't move. He stopped close enough that I could smell cedar and coffee and something darker underneath. close enough that his presence felt like a wall between me and the photos on his phone. "You don't have to know how," he said quietly. "That's what I'm for." 3 days. That's how long it took Bruce Downey to dismantle my daughter's humiliation and rebuild it into something that looked like magic. I'd spent those 72 hours in the penthouse learning the architecture of protection. Marta rotated shifts with 2 other guards whose names I learned, but whose faces remained professionally blank. Nora adapted with the frightening resilience of 7-year-olds, turning the lavender bedroom into a fortress of stuffed animals and declaring the bulletproof windows the best TV ever, because she could watch boats all day. Bruce came and went like weather, unpredictable, powerful, impossible to ignore. He brought groceries, coloring books, a tablet loaded with educational games that Nora abandoned after 10 minutes in favor of drawing elaborate birthday cakes on printer paper she'd found in his office. On the 3rd morning, he appeared in the kitchen while I was making coffee, still in yesterday's clothes, stubble darker, eyes carrying the weight of decisions I couldn't see. "It's handled," he said without preamble. "What's handled?" "Nora's party, tonight, 6 o'clock, same restaurant." He poured himself coffee like he hadn't just casually announced the impossible. 23 confirmed attendees, parents included." I stared at him. "You can't just... How did you... I own 3 pizza places, sent a memo to the parents, free pizza for a month, delivered to any address in the district, as an apology for the health code confusion." His mouth curved slightly. "Turns out people are very forgiving when you feed them." "You bribed them." I corrected misinformation and offered compensation for the inconvenience. He took a long drink. "There's a difference." "That's a very expensive difference." "Nora's 7. She deserves a party where people actually show up." He set the cup down. "Besides, it sends a message. Rook tried to isolate you. I'm showing everyone in that district exactly how isolated he is instead." The party was everything the first attempt wasn't. The same back room at the restaurant, but transformed. Real decorations this time, professional ones, with balloon arches and a banner that didn't look like it came from a craft store clearance bin. Tables set with actual linens. A dessert spread that belonged in magazines, and children. Everywhere. Nora's entire 1st grade class, plus siblings, plus parents who smiled and made small talk and pretended the ghost party had never happened. I stood near the entrance in the same burgundy dress, watching my daughter shriek with laughter as she played some elaborate game involving chairs and music, and tried very hard not to cry. Bruce appeared at my elbow. He'd changed into charcoal slacks and a crisp white shirt, the gold chain visible at his collar. Somehow he managed to look both dangerous and approachable, like a wolf who'd learned to smile. "You're doing it again," he said quietly. "Doing what?" "Trying not to cry in front of people who don't deserve your tears." "These are good tears," I managed. "Happy tears." "Those count too." His hand came to rest at the small of my back, that same steadying touch from 3 nights ago. "She's having fun. Because of you. Because kids are resilient and pizza is universal." But his eyes tracked Nora across the room with an attention that suggested he was calculating threats even in the middle of a birthday party. "The candles are ready. You want to do the honors?" We gathered the children around the cake, a simpler version of the 3-tier monstrosity from the first attempt, but still elaborate enough to make Nora's eyes go wide. Bruce helped me light the candles, his hands steady while mine shook. "Make a wish, baby," I whispered. Nora squeezed her eyes shut, thought hard, then blew with enough force to extinguish every flame and spray wax across the frosting. The room erupted in applause. "What did you wish for?" one of the other kids asked. "Can't tell or it won't come true." Nora grinned, gap-toothed and brilliant. "But it already kinda did." Later, while parents mingled and kids played, I found myself in Bruce's office just off the main dining room. He'd brought me there to sign some paperwork. "Insurance waivers for the party," he'd said. though I suspected it was an excuse to give me a quiet moment away from the manufactured normalcy. The office was surprisingly personal. Dark wood desk, leather chairs, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, and on the wall behind his desk, held up with painter's tape, were Nora's drawings, 7 of them, each one a cake, progressively more elaborate. The first was simple, a circle with lines for candles. The last was a 3-tier masterpiece with flowers and swirls, and what might have been a dragon. "She's been coming in here while you nap," Bruce said from the doorway. "Uses my printer paper. I told her she could draw on anything except the contracts." "You put them up." "She asked me to." He moved into the space, casual but alert. "Said they were birthday cakes for all the parties she's going to have now that she knows the cake man." The cake man. I wanted to laugh and sob simultaneously. "Bruce, before you thank me, you should know this isn't altruism." He leaned against the desk, arms crossed. "Every parent here tonight now associates me with their child's happiness. When Rook makes his move, and he will, they'll remember that the Downey family throws birthday parties, not funerals." The cold calculation underneath the kindness should have repelled me. Instead, I found it oddly comforting. At least he was honest about the chess game. "Still," I said, "thank you." He nodded, then straightened as voices carried from the main room. Not the happy chaos of children, but something else. Something wrong. We both moved at once. The party had gone still. Parents had pulled their children back instinctively, creating a circle of space around a man who'd just walked through the door. He was young, early 20s maybe. Leather jacket. Nervous energy, holding a box wrapped in black paper like it might explode. Marta was already moving to intercept, but the messenger's voice carried across the room. "I have a delivery for Mrs. Downey." Every head turned toward me. "I'm not—" I started. Bruce's hand closed around my wrist. Not hard, just present. "I'll take it. Instructions say it has to go to Mrs. Downey directly." The messenger's eyes were too wide, pupils dilated. He was terrified. "Please, I'm just the courier." Bruce exchanged a look with Marta. Some wordless communication passed between them. Then he nodded once, and Marta stepped back. The messenger approached slowly, holding the box out like an offering. I took it because refusing felt more dangerous than accepting. The moment my fingers closed around it, the messenger bolted. "Let him go," Bruce said quietly when Marta moved to follow. "He's not the message." The box was light. Too light to be dangerous, unless danger had gotten very creative lately. Inside, nestled in black tissue paper, was a wooden chess piece, a rook, and underneath it, a burner phone. The phone rang before I could set it down. Bruce took it from my hand, put it on speaker, set it on the nearest table where everyone could hear. "Bruce Downey." The voice on the other end was smooth, amused, like this was all a wonderful joke. "I've heard so much about your new wife." "Rook." Bruce's tone could have frozen blood. "You're interrupting a child's birthday party." "Am I? How rude of me." The amusement didn't waver. "I wanted to congratulate you on the happy marriage. Very sudden. Very strategic." "Say what you called to say." "I have a guest I think you'll want to meet. Joel. You remember Joel, don't you? Cousin to Edna's unfortunate ex-husband. He's been very helpful these past few months." A pause, then muffled sounds. Whimpering. "Though I'm afraid he's outlived his usefulness." My stomach turned to ice. "Let him go," Bruce said. "He's a civilian. He doesn't belong in this." "Oh, but he does. He brought me such wonderful information about your wife. Her schedule, her daughter's school, her pathetic little life." Rook's voice turned sharp. "And now she's under your protection, which makes this entire situation so much more interesting. So here's my proposal. You, In person, by midnight. The old warehouse on the docks, you know the one. Come alone and Joel goes free. Bring your lovely wife and we can discuss what happens to people who pretend to be things they're not. She's not. Not what? Not your wife? Rook laughed. The whole city thinks she is. You made sure of that. So either she matters enough for you to trade for, or she doesn't. Either way, I win. The line went dead. The party room was silent. Parents were already gathering children, making excuses, ushering them toward exits, the magical evening dissolving into fear and confusion. Nora pushed through the crowd, still holding a piece of cake. Mommy, are we leaving? Yes, baby. I pulled her close. We're leaving. Bruce was already moving, phone out, speaking in rapid Italian to someone on the other end. Marta appeared at his shoulder, weapon visible now under her jacket. Get them back to the penthouse, Bruce said. Full lockdown, no one in or out. No, I heard myself say. Bruce turned slowly. Edna? No. I handed Nora to one of the remaining parents, a woman who'd been kind earlier, who I had to trust because I had no other choice. Take her with you, please. My friend Camilla's number is in my phone. Call her. Tell her to come get Nora. Then I turned to Bruce. I'm going with you. Absolutely not. He called me your wife. He threatened me by name. This isn't just about you anymore. My voice was steady despite the terror. You told me you have rules, that civilians, especially children, are sacred. Make him say it out loud, on camera, with me standing there as proof. It's too dangerous. So is letting him think I'm just another piece on his game board. I stepped closer. You claimed me publicly. You put your name on me. Now let me use it to draw the line. Bruce stared at me for a long moment. Then, so quietly only I could hear, you're either very brave or very stupid. Both. Probably. I met his eyes. But I'm going. Marta made a sound that might have been approval. I'll prep the team. Light gear, Bruce said. No visible weapons until absolutely necessary. This is a negotiation, not a raid. Negotiations with Rook don't end well. This one will. Bruce's jaw tightened. Because he's about to learn what it costs to use children as leverage. He turned to me, something dangerous and protective burning in those amber eyes. We go tonight. You stay behind me. You speak only when I tell you to, and if anything goes wrong, you run. Understood? I nodded. Say it. I run. Good. He pulled out his phone, sent a rapid series of messages. Marta, I want eyes on that warehouse in 20 minutes. Full surveillance, every exit mapped. Already done. Then we move at 11, gives us an hour to set the board. He looked at me one more time. Last chance to stay safe. Safe is what got my daughter's birthday party ghosted, I said. I'm done with safe. Bruce's mouth curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. Then let's go teach Rook what happens when he breaks my rules. The warehouse smelled like oil and rain and decisions that couldn't be unmade. We'd arrived in 2 vehicles, Bruce and me in the SUV with Marta driving, followed by a second car carrying 3 men whose names I didn't know, but whose presence felt like coiled violence waiting for permission. They wore dark clothes and earpieces, and moved with the efficiency of people who'd done this before. The building sat on the docks, where the river met industrial Chicago, all rusted metal and broken windows. Water dripped through holes in the roof, creating irregular percussion against concrete. Somewhere in the distance, a ship's horn bellowed into the night. Bruce had spent the drive briefing me in clipped sentences. Let me establish the frame. Don't speak until he addresses you directly. If he gets loud, stay quiet. If he gets quiet, watch his hands. Now we stood outside the entrance, a rolling door half open, spilling yellow light into the darkness. Last chance, Bruce said. I shook my head. I'm going in. Marta moved first, weapon visible now, sweeping the space with professional paranoia. Then she nodded once and we entered. The interior was a study in theatrical menace. Folding table at the center, positioned under the only working light fixture. Rook sat behind it like a king holding court in a kingdom of rust and shadows. He was younger than I'd expected. Early 40s, maybe, with silver at his temples and a suit that cost enough to feed my daughter for a year. Behind him, cameras on tripods. At least 4, all angles covered, red recording lights blinking like predator eyes. And tied to a chair off to the side, face swollen and bleeding, was Joel. He looked up when we entered, and the hope that flashed across his face made my stomach turn. He'd helped destroy Nora's party, fed Rook information about our lives, and now he was paying for it in ways I couldn't let myself think about too carefully. Bruce Downey. Rook's voice carried that same smooth amusement from the phone. And the blushing bride, how domestic. 2 men flanked Rook's position, muscle in leather jackets, hands conspicuously empty but positioned near concealed weapons. A third stood near the cameras, adjusting angles. Bruce moved forward with that same unhurried confidence, putting himself between me and the table. "You wanted me in person. I'm here. Let Joel go." "In a moment. First, let's talk about your interesting new marriage." Rook's eyes slid past Bruce to find me. "Mrs. Downey. What a pleasure to finally meet the woman who inspired such a dramatic public gesture." I opened my mouth, but Bruce's hand moved fractionally behind his back, a signal to wait. "She's not part of this conversation," Bruce said. "Oh, but she is. She's the entire conversation." Rook leaned forward, elbows on the table. "You don't claim civilians, Bruce. You never have. It's one of your charming little rules. So either she's not actually civilian, which would be fascinating, or you broke your own code, which makes you a hypocrite, which makes you vulnerable." "Or," I said, stepping around Bruce before he could stop me, "you used a 7-year-old's birthday party to bait a man, and he responded the way any decent person would." The warehouse went still. Rook's smile didn't waver, but something cold moved behind his eyes. "Excuse me?" I walked forward slowly, making myself visible to all 4 cameras. My heart was trying to escape through my throat, but I kept my voice level. Calm. The same tone I used with angry parents in the bakery when they complained about prices. "You orchestrated an elaborate smear campaign to empty a child's birthday party. You paid someone to spread lies about health violations and criminal investigations. You turned what should have been a celebration into a humiliation." I stopped at the edge of the light, close enough that the cameras would catch my face clearly. "That tells everyone watching that you're not powerful. It tells them you're afraid." "Edna," Bruce's voice carried a warning, but I couldn't stop now. Wouldn't stop. "Powerful men don't need to terrorize children to prove a point," I continued. "Powerful men handle their business directly. You hid behind a 7-year-old because you knew Bruce Downey has rules you're too cowardly to follow." Rook stood slowly. The muscle behind him tensed. "You should teach your wife some manners," he said to Bruce. "She's not wrong," Bruce replied. His voice was ice over steel. "You broke the one line I won't negotiate on, and now every camera in this room is recording what happens when someone crosses it." Bold words for a man who's outnumbered. "I'm not here to fight." Bruce pulled a folder from inside his jacket, set it on the table with deliberate care. "I'm here to make a trade. 3 waterfront properties on the North Docks. Commercial zoning. Current valuation $18 million. Rook's eyebrows climbed. "For Joel?" "For Joel. For leaving Edna and her daughter alone. For agreeing to a clause that goes into effect immediately." Bruce opened the folder, revealing property deeds and legal documents. "Families, schools, and children's events are permanently off limits. No surveillance, no threats, no using them as leverage, ever." "And if I refuse?" "Then these cameras record you refusing to protect children. record you prioritizing profit over basic human decency, and that footage ends up on every news desk and social media platform in Chicago by morning. Bruce's smile was razor thin. Your empire exists in shadows, Rook. I'm offering you a fortune to stay there, or I drag you into the light and let the city decide what you're worth. Rook stared at the folder for a long moment. Then he laughed, genuine amusement that echoed off concrete and rust. 18 million for one useless informant and a promise I won't target soccer moms. He shook his head. You're getting soft, Downey. I'm being clear about my boundaries. There's a difference. Bruce's hand rested on the folder. The properties are solid investments, for now. Something in his tone made Rook's eyes narrow. For now. Zoning changes are coming through City Council in 6 months. New flood regulations for the industrial waterfront. Every building in that zone will need expensive retrofitting or face condemnation. Bruce's expression didn't change. But 6 months is plenty of time to flip the properties to someone who doesn't read zoning proposals carefully. You'll make your money back before the ground gets soggy. It was brilliant and ruthless. A fortune that came with a ticking clock. Valuable today, but worthless tomorrow if you held it too long. Rook understood immediately. I could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, greed wrestling with pride. You're giving me poisoned real estate. I'm giving you a window of opportunity. What you do with it is your business. Bruce pulled a pen from his pocket, set it on the folder. But the clause is non-negotiable. Families and schools are sacred. Say it out loud, on camera, and sign. Or this conversation ends and tomorrow gets very complicated for you. Rook looked at the cameras, at Joel whimpering in the chair, at me standing there in my burgundy dress like evidence of everything Bruce was claiming to protect. Then he picked up the pen. Fine. Families, schools, children's birthdays, off limits, permanently. He signed with a flourish that suggested he thought he was winning. Happy? Delighted, Bruce said flatly. Joel? Marta moved before anyone could react, crossing to the chair and cutting Joel's restraints with a knife that appeared from nowhere. Joel collapsed forward, sobbing. Get him out of here, Bruce said. One of our men stepped forward to help Joel toward the exit. That's when Rook's lieutenant, young, angry, looking for an excuse, lunged. He made it 3 steps before Marta intercepted. The disarm was elegant, a twist, a pivot, and suddenly the lieutenant was face down on concrete with Marta's boot on his spine and his own weapon in her hand. Don't, Bruce said quietly. Not to Marta, to Rook. We had an agreement. I kept my word. You keep yours. Rook raised a hand, and his remaining muscle froze. Get up, he said to his lieutenant. This meeting is over. Marta stepped back slowly, ejecting the magazine from the weapon and tossing both pieces in opposite directions. Then she returned to Bruce's side like nothing had happened. We walked out the same way we came, in. Bruce leading, me in the middle, Marta behind, our team flanking. No one spoke until we were outside in the rain that had started falling while we negotiated. Joel was already in the second vehicle, wrapped in a blanket, shaking. Take him to the hospital, Bruce instructed. Stay until the police take statements. Make sure he tells them everything about Trent and the party setup. And the custody angle? Marta asked. What custody angle? I demanded. Bruce's jaw tightened. Trent filed emergency custody papers this afternoon. Claims you've been living with a known criminal and exposing Nora to danger. The ground tilted. He what? He's waiting in the parking lot 2 blocks from here, Marta added. Spotted him 20 minutes ago with a camera crew. Looks like he's planning to sell footage of you leaving a warehouse negotiation. Rage replaced fear. Hot, clarifying rage that burned away 3 days of terror and humiliation. Where's the folder? I asked Bruce. What folder? The one you had your people get from my apartment, the shoebox, everything I've kept on Trent. My hands weren't shaking anymore. I want it. Now. Bruce studied my face, then nodded to Marta. She opened the SUV's back compartment and retrieved a folder. My folder, the one I'd been building for 3 years. "What are you going to do?" Bruce asked quietly. "I'm going to bury him the same way you buried Rook." I tucked the folder under my arm. "With evidence and witnesses and the truth. Edna, you promised legal means, non-violent solutions." I met his eyes. "This is both. You taught me the strategy. Now watch me use it." Something that might have been pride flickered across Bruce's face. "Marta goes with you?" "Fine. And I'm calling Detective Harrow. He owes my family a clean favor." "Even better." We drove to the parking lot in silence, rain drumming on the roof. Trent was exactly where Marta said he'd be, leaning against his car with a local news camera operator and that particular expression of vindictive triumph he wore whenever he thought he'd won. He straightened when he saw me approach. The camera light flicked on. "Jessica, hey, Edna." His smile was poison wrapped in charm. "Crazy running into you here. Want to explain why you're leaving a warehouse at midnight with known organized crime figures?" I opened my folder calmly. "Want to explain why you owe $23,000 in back child support?" His smile faltered. "Or why you sent 87 harassing text messages last year alone? Or why you collaborated with a criminal named Rook to sabotage your own daughter's birthday party?" I pulled out printouts, timestamps, receipts, 3 years of documentation. "I have everything, Trent. Every late payment, every threat, every lie you told to avoid being a father." "You can't." "I can, and I will." I turned to the camera operator. "Are you recording this?" The operator glanced at Trent, then nodded. "Good." I held up the first document. "Then let's talk about what makes someone unfit to have custody." Behind me, a sedan pulled up. Detective Harrow stepped out, badge visible, expression neutral but interested. "Mrs. Kernot," he said, "I understand you have evidence of harassment and child endangerment you'd like to file officially?" I smiled at Trent. "Not victory, justice." "I do, Detective, I absolutely do." Detective Harrow had the face of a man who'd seen every variation of human cruelty and had stopped being surprised decades ago. He took my folder with careful hands, flipping through pages under the parking lot's fluorescent lights, while rain misted everything in soft halos. Trent stood frozen, his camera operator slowly lowering the equipment as he realized the story had shifted. "These text messages," Harrow said, voice flat and professional. "You have the originals on your phone?" "Every one." I pulled out my cell, navigated to the thread I'd never deleted because evidence mattered more than emotional hygiene. 3 years' worth, times, dates, content, all backed up to cloud storage. And the child support arrears? Certified mail receipts for every missed payment. Court documents showing the original custody agreement. Bank statements proving I've been covering expenses alone. My voice was steady now, all the shaking replaced by something colder and more focused. "He owes $23,000. That's not an exaggeration. That's math." Harrow's eyes moved to Trent. "Mr. Kernot, you want to respond to any of this before I start making official notes?" "She's living with a criminal," Trent sputtered. "She's exposing my daughter to organized crime. That's—" "Mrs. Kernot is under protective custody following credible threats to her safety," Harrow interrupted. "Threats that originated from your association with a known criminal named Rook, who you gave information about your daughter's schedule and location." He closed my folder. "Want to keep talking, or do you want to shut up and call a lawyer?" The color drained from Trent's face. It wasn't. "You collaborated with Rook to sabotage a child's birthday party," I said quietly. "You gave him intel about Nora's school, about where I work. You sold your own daughter's safety to clear a gambling debt." I stepped closer, and he actually flinched. "So yes, Detective, I'd like to file charges, harassment, child endangerment, contributing to criminal conspiracy." "Edna, come on." Trent tried for conciliatory, but his voice cracked. We can work this out. I'll catch up on payments. You'll stay away from Nora. Bruce's voice cut through the rain, quiet but absolute. He'd been standing back, letting me lead, but now he moved forward to my shoulder. Permanently. Or the next conversation won't be with the police. You can't threaten me. That wasn't a threat. That was a statement of consequence. Bruce's expression was carved from stone. Mrs. Kernett has evidence, Detective Harrow has jurisdiction, and I have resources that will make sure every judge, every social worker, every person involved in custody decisions knows exactly what you did. He paused. Walk away now, or I bury you legally and publicly. Your choice. Trent looked at me, then at Bruce, then at Harrow's impassive face. Whatever he saw there made him deflate. Fine, he whispered. I'll sign whatever. Just don't press charges. Too late for that, Harrow said. Mrs. Kernett, I'll need you to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. Bring all of this. He hefted the folder. In the meantime, I'm issuing an emergency protective order. Mr. Kernett, you're to have no contact with Mrs. Kernett or the minor child. Violations will result in immediate arrest. The camera operator had already packed up and left. Trent stood alone in the rain, looking smaller than I'd ever seen him. You're making a mistake, he said, but there was no conviction behind it. No, I replied. I'm correcting one. We left him there, a sad figure dissolving into mist and bad choices. Marta drove us away in silence. After a few blocks, Bruce spoke quietly. Pull over at the Riverwalk. We'll walk back. Sir, the security protocols... We'll stay in sight. Give us 10 minutes. Marta's expression suggested this was a terrible idea, but she pulled over near a stretch of Riverwalk lit by street lamps and empty of people at this hour. The rain had softened to a drizzle, and the city reflected in the water like broken glass reassembling itself. Bruce opened my door, offered his hand. I took it because my legs felt unsteady, and the adrenaline was starting to crash. We walked in silence for a minute, footsteps echoing on wet concrete. Somewhere across the water, a train whistle mourned. You didn't need me back there, Bruce finally said. I needed you to call Harrow. I needed Marta to make sure Trent didn't try anything stupid. I stopped walking, turned to face him. But the rest, the evidence, the statements, standing up to him, that was mine. Yes. Something shifted in his expression. It was. I've been scared of him for 3 years, scared he'd take Nora, scared he'd make me look unfit, scared that everyone would believe his version instead of mine. The words came easier now. But tonight I realized something. He's not powerful. He's just mean. And mean only works if you let it. My mother used to say something similar. Bruce leaned against the railing, looking out at the water. She grew up in Naples, old world, old rules. Women were supposed to be quiet. Decorative. She was neither. His mouth curved slightly. She taught me that power without principle is just cruelty wearing a suit. That real strength is knowing when not to use force. Is that why you have rules? The thing about civilians and children? Part of it. The other part is practical. Violence against innocents makes you a target for everyone. Criminals, law enforcement, civilians who suddenly care about justice because you made it. Personal. He glanced at me. But mostly it's because my mother would haunt me if I became the kind of man who hurt people who couldn't fight back. She sounds formidable. She was. Pain flickered across his face. Cancer took her fast. 6 months from diagnosis to burial. I was 29, running the family business, trying to hold everything together while she faded. He was quiet for a moment. She made me promise on her deathbed that I'd never let the work make me cruel, that I'd remember there were lines even we couldn't cross. You've kept that promise. I try to. He turned to face me fully. What about you? What made you keep all that evidence on Trent? Fear, mostly. Fear that one day he'd try to rewrite history, and I'd have nothing to prove he was lying. I wrapped my arms around myself. After the divorce, my lawyer told me to document everything. Every interaction, every missed payment, every broken promise. She said family court believes paperwork more than emotions. Smart lawyer? She was right. I looked up at him. But I never thought I'd actually use it. Part of me hoped Trent would just disappear, move away, start over somewhere else, stop being a problem. He wouldn't have. I know that now. The drizzle was getting heavier, but neither of us moved. You know what the worst part was? I believed him when he said I wasn't enough, that I was too damaged from the divorce, too poor, too focused on survival to be a good mother. I let him make me small. You were never small, Bruce said quietly. You were strategic. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Small means you gave up. Strategic means you were waiting for the right moment. His hand came up to brush rain from my cheek, the gesture so gentle it stole my breath. Tonight was your moment. You took it. We stood there in the rain, close enough that I could feel the heat of him, see the water droplets catching in his stubble. His eyes held mine with an intensity that made my skin flush despite the cold. Bruce, I know what you're going to say. Do you? You're going to tell me this is complicated, that the pretend wife situation was survival, not choice, that now that Trent's handled and Rook's contained, you don't need protection anymore. His thumb traced my cheekbone. Am I close? Partially. My heart was trying to escape. I was going to say that if we ever cross the line from pretend to real, I need it to be a choice, not strategy, not protection, not because I'm scared or desperate or grateful. Just choice. Just choice. I caught his wrist gently, held his hand against my face for a moment before lowering it. Everything with Trent was about him deciding what I deserved, how much effort I was worth, whether I measured up to whatever impossible standard he'd invented. I stepped back slightly. I won't do that again, not with anyone. Bruce nodded slowly. That's fair. Is it? Because from where you're standing, I'm a complication. A civilian who broke your rules just by existing in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're not a complication. His voice was rough. You're... He stopped, jaw tight, clearly wrestling with words that wouldn't come. Finally. You're someone I want to protect because you matter. Not because of strategy or optics or maintaining boundaries, because you matter. The confession hung between us like something fragile and dangerous. Bruce. His phone buzzed, then again. A rapid series of alerts that made his expression shift from vulnerable to calculating in seconds. He pulled it out, scanned the screen, and swore quietly in Italian. What's wrong? Rook's already flipping the properties. He scrolled rapidly. Posted them for sale an hour after we left the warehouse. Marked them up 20% and found a buyer. Some development company that doesn't know about the zoning changes. He looked up. It's going to be a scandal when the flood regulations hit. And my name's on the original sale. Can people trace it back to you? They'll try. Some bloggers already connecting dots, calling it a Downey family scheme to dump toxic real estate on unsuspecting investors. He pocketed the phone. The legitimate businesses, the restaurants, the properties I've been building to go clean, they're all going to take a hit. I thought about the warehouse negotiation, about Bruce trading a fortune to protect an abstract principle, about cameras recording him making deals that looked criminal even when they weren't. You need to control the narrative, I said slowly. How? Show people what the protection actually looks like. An idea was forming, edges still blurry but the center clear. You spent millions tonight to draw a line around children and families. You threw a birthday party for a kid whose own father sabotaged her. You keep that bedroom stocked with toys for families in crisis. I met his eyes. Let people see that. Not the deals, not the negotiations, the outcome, what protection actually builds. Bruce stared at me. You want me to do PR? I want you to tell the truth in a way that matters. I stepped closer. Rook thinks he won because he's going to flip those properties for profit. But you won because you got him to say on camera that children are off limits. That's the story. Not the real estate. The press won't care about moral victories. Then we make them care. The idea was solidifying now, urgent and clear. What if protection wasn't just about stopping threats? What if it was about building something better? What are you proposing? I don't know yet. Not exactly. I looked out at the water, at the city lights reflecting like promises. But I know what people need. I've lived in that need for 3 years. And I know what you have. Resources, reach, the ability to move mountains when you decide something matters. Edna, just think about it, I said. Please. Because right now the narrative is mob boss dumps bad real estate. But it could be man builds something worth protecting. One of those stories ends with you buried. The other changes everything. He finished quietly. Yes. He studied my face for a long moment, then nodded once, decisive. We'll talk tomorrow, when you're not running on adrenaline and I'm not calculating how many lawyers I need to keep the wolves at bay. He glanced toward where Marta waited with the SUV. But Edna, if we do this, if we pivot towards something public and permanent, it stops being pretend. For either of us. I know. And you're okay with that? I thought about Nora's drawings on his office wall. About the lavender bedroom kept ready for children who needed shelter. About a man who'd traded millions for a principal. Ask me tomorrow, I said. When we're both thinking clearly. Fair enough. He offered his arm. Come on, let's get you home before Marta decides we're both liabilities. We walked back to the SUV together. Close but not touching. While the city stretched out around us full of choices we hadn't made yet. The bakery smelled like butter and sugar and new beginnings. I'd worked the early shift here for 2 years. 5 a.m. starts, minimum wage plus tips, the kind of job that kept you vertical but never let you get ahead. My manager, Rosa, was a grandmother from Pilsen who ran the place with an iron spatula and a soft heart. She'd given me extra shifts when Nora was sick, let me bring day-old pastries home, never once made me feel small for needing the help. Now Rosa stood with her arms crossed, staring at the check Bruce had handed her 20 minutes ago. This is too much, she said for the 3rd time. It's exactly right, Bruce replied. He was in casual clothes today, dark jeans, a charcoal Henley, the gold chain just visible at his collar. Still looked expensive but approachable, like a wolf who'd learned to blend with the sheep. 6 weeks of Saturday workshops for kids, baking basics, kitchen safety, nutrition education. Mrs. Kernet helps design the curriculum. I cover costs and liability insurance. Why? Rosa's skepticism was warranted. Men like Bruce didn't fund community programs without angles. Because 23 children had their trust in adults damaged when a birthday party was weaponized, I said quietly. This is about rebuilding that, showing them that kitchens can be safe spaces, that adults sometimes keep promises. Rosa's expression softened. She looked at the check again, then at me, then at Bruce. You hurt her? I'll put you in the oven, she said conversationally. Understood. And if this is some publicity stunt, it's not. Bruce's voice was steady. It's proof that protection doesn't end when the threat does. It's about building something that lasts. Rosa studied him for another long moment, then nodded once and tucked the check into her apron. Fine, but I picked the recipes. And no cameras unless parents consent. Agreed. The first workshop was controlled chaos, in the best possible way. 12 kids ages 6 to 9, including Nora, stood at stations wearing aprons too big for their bodies and expressions of intense concentration. Bruce had hired 2 culinary students to assist, and Rosa commanded the room like a general deploying troops. Measuring cups are not toys, she announced, and flour does not belong in anyone's hair, Mateo. Mateo, who'd been about to dust his neighbor, froze guiltily. Nora was in her element, carefully spooning sugar into a bowl with the focus of a surgeon. Bruce stood behind her, sleeves rolled up, patiently explaining the chemistry of leavening agents in words she'd never remember, but a tone she'd carry forever. So the baking soda makes bubbles? She asked. Exactly. The bubbles get trapped in the dough and make it rise. Like magic. Like science. Which is better than magic because you can repeat it. He helped her crack an egg, his large hands guiding her small ones. See? You did that perfectly? Nora beamed. I watched from the register area, ostensibly managing sign-in sheets but really just observing the casual tenderness Bruce brought to children. The way he crouched to their eye level. Never talked down, never rushed them. Let them make mistakes and treated those mistakes like experiments rather than failures. He's good with them. I turned to find Marta beside me, dressed down in jeans and a jacket that definitely concealed a weapon. She'd been posted outside, but had apparently decided perimeter security required visual confirmation. He is, I agreed. His mother used to bring him to community kitchens in Naples when he was small. Taught him that feeding people was how you built loyalty. Marta's expression was unreadable. He remembers. Is that why he does this? Loyalty? He does this because it's right. The loyalty is just a side effect. Marta's eyes swept the room, cataloging exits and angles even here, among children and cookie dough. You're good for him. I blinked. What? You make him remember there are things worth protecting beyond territory and reputation. She glanced at me. He's been trying to go legitimate for 3 years, building businesses that don't require violence to sustain. You're helping him see what that actually looks like. Before I could respond, the door chimed. A man entered. Mid-30s, leather jacket, trying too hard to look dangerous. He scanned the room with obvious intent, gaze landing on Bruce and staying there. Marta moved before I could blink, positioning herself between the stranger and the children. Can I help you? Rosa's voice carried warning. Just picking up an order. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. For Downey. We don't have any orders under that name, I said, pulse accelerating. That's funny, because I have a list that says otherwise. He pulled a piece of paper from his jacket, unfolded it with deliberate slowness. Names, addresses, schedules, kids from that birthday party. Thought Mr. Downey might want to know someone's been asking questions. Bruce straightened slowly from Nora's station. His expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. You have 60 seconds to leave, he said quietly. Starting now. Or what? You going to start something in front of all these kids? The man's confidence was chemical, artificially inflated. Rook said you'd gone soft. Guess he was right. Marta's hand moved fractionally toward her jacket. Bruce raised a hand. Stop. His eyes never left the intruder. Rosa, take the children to the back kitchen, now. Rosa didn't argue. Within 30 seconds, she'd herded all 12 kids through the rear door with the kind of efficiency that suggested this wasn't her first crisis. The moment they were clear, Bruce moved. Not violently. Not dramatically. He simply walked forward with that same unhurried confidence, closing distance until the man had to either step back or hold ground. He held ground. Mistake. That list, Bruce said conversationally. Where did you get it? None of your... Where did you get it? The man's bravado cracked. Rook's guys. They're tracking the families from the party, building leverage in case you decide the property deal wasn't enough. Rook signed a contract. On camera. Yeah, well, contracts only matter if you enforce them. The man tried to step around Bruce. I'm just the messenger. Marta, Bruce said without turning. Call Detective Harrow. Tell him we have someone attempting to intimidate witnesses to a prior crime. Also call Vincent." "Vincent?" I echoed. "My attorney. The one who specializes in restraining orders and making people regret their life choices." The man's face went pale. "I didn't threaten anyone. I just brought information." "You brought a list of children's names and addresses into a place where those children were present? That's menacing with intent." Bruce smiled, and it was terrifying. "You're also violating Rook's agreement, which means he's violating our contract, which means those waterfront properties I sold him? I'm filing for rescission based on material breach." "You can't do that." "Watch me." Bruce pulled out his phone, tapped twice. "Vincent? Bruce Downey. I need an emergency injunction filed against Rook's organization. Contract breach, continued harassment of protected civilians. Yes, I know what time it is. I'll pay your retainer in gold bullion if it makes you happy. Just file it now." Marta had her phone out too, speaking quietly to what I assumed was Harrow. The intruder looked between them, realization dawning that he'd walked into a trap. Rook's going to learn that breaking agreements costs more than keeping them." Bruce pocketed his phone. "You can tell him that. Right after you explained to Detective Harrow why you thought threatening children was a smart career move." 20 minutes later, the intruder was in a police car, and the workshop was resuming under heavy security. 2 of Bruce's people now flanked the entrance. Marta had done a full sweep of the building, and Rosa had produced cookies from somewhere, distributing them to rattled children with the calm of someone who'd survived worse. Nora appeared at my side, chocolate chip cookie in hand, seemingly unbothered by the interruption. "Mommy, are we in trouble?" "No, baby, we're safe." "Because of Bruce?" "Because of a lot of things." I pulled her close. "But yes, Bruce helps." She nodded solemnly, then returned to her station where Bruce was waiting to help her frost the cookies they'd made earlier. I watched them work together. My daughter and the man who'd claimed us as protection, and somehow become more than that in the process. Watched him listen to her chatter about school and friends and the proper ratio of sprinkles to frosting. Watched him be gentle and present and real in a way Trent had never managed. And I realized something that terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. I was falling for him. Not because he'd saved us, not out of gratitude or desperation, but because of moments like this. Flower on his sleeves, patience in his voice, choosing to be here when he could be anywhere. Fear had authored so much of my life. Fear of Trent, of poverty, of judgment, of not being enough. But watching Bruce teach my daughter about leavening agents and listening to Rosa laugh at something he'd said, I decided fear had written enough chapters. Whatever came next, whether it was real or complicated or impossible, I was choosing it with eyes open. Rosa appeared at my elbow again. "That man of yours, he's not my man." "Sure he's not." She handed me a cookie, still warm. "He asked if he could take you and Nora to dinner tonight. Small thing, his place. Some people he wants you to meet." My heart stuttered. "When did he ask this?" "While you were giving your statement to the police. Said to tell you it's casual, nothing formal. But he wants Nora to meet his inner circle." Rosa's expression softened. "Said family should know family." "We're not." "He thinks you are. Question is, do you?" I looked across the bakery at Bruce, who was now helping 3 kids simultaneously, somehow managing to make each one feel like they were the only person in the room. "I don't know what we are," I admitted. "Then maybe tonight you find out." Rosa patted my arm. "Also, Nora's been practicing something in the bathroom mirror. Might want to check on that." I found my daughter in the small employee bathroom, standing on a step stool, talking to her reflection. "Please say yes," she was whispering. "Please, please, please say yes. You have to say yes because he has a fish tank and makes good pancakes and he doesn't leave when things get hard." My throat closed. "Nora." She spun, face flushing. "Mommy, I was just practicing." She nodded, suddenly shy. Bruce wants us to come to dinner, to meet his friends. I'm supposed to ask you because he said it's important that you choose. And you want me to say yes. More than anything. Her eyes were huge and hopeful. He's nice, Mommy. And he makes you smile the real way, not the pretend way you used to smile when Daddy was around. 7 years old, and she'd seen everything. Okay, I said, kneeling to her eye level. Let's go to dinner. Nora launched herself into my arms with enough force to knock us both off balance. And over her shoulder, through the bathroom door, I could see Bruce watching us. His expression was carefully neutral, but his eyes held a question I was finally ready to answer. Yes, whatever this was becoming, whatever it cost, whatever it required. Yes. My cousin Sandra lived in a house that looked like a Pinterest board had achieved sentience. All shiplap and subway tile and signs that said things like, gather in farmhouse script. She opened the door wearing athleisure that cost more than my monthly grocery budget and an expression of carefully cultivated surprise. Edna, this is unexpected. We need to talk, I said, not a request. She glanced past me toward where Marta waited in the SUV, then back at my face. Whatever she saw there made her step aside. Kids are at soccer, Mark's at the office. She led me to a kitchen that belonged in magazines. Coffee? No, answers. Sandra's polished composure cracked slightly. I don't know what you were in that group chat. The one Joel used to spread lies about the restaurant. I pulled out my phone, showed her the screenshots Detective Harrow had provided. You didn't create the rumors, but you helped spread them. You told at least 4 other parents that the venue was sketchy. She stared at the screen, color draining from her face. Edna, I didn't know. I thought... You thought what? That humiliating me was just family sport? My voice stayed level through sheer force of will. That sabotaging a 7-year-old's birthday party was acceptable collateral damage? It wasn't like that. But her eyes wouldn't meet mine. Joel said the restaurant had problems. Real problems. I was trying to protect the other children. From what? Cake and candles? I stepped closer. Or were you protecting them from being associated with me? The family embarrassment. The single mom who couldn't keep a man. That's not fair. Neither was what you did to Nora. I pocketed my phone. I'm not here for revenge, Sandra. I'm here to draw a line. You participated in something cruel. You owe me and my daughter an apology. And you need to tell the other parents the truth about what actually happened. She was quiet for a long moment, fingers twisting the dish towel she'd picked up. You're right, she finally said. I'm sorry. I should have questioned Joel instead of just believing him. I should have called you directly. She looked up, and there were actual tears. I was jealous, okay? You lost everything. The marriage, the money, the stability. And you still managed to be a better mother than me with all my advantages. It was easier to believe you were failing than to admit I was. The confession hung between us, raw and complicated. I'm not looking for your approval, Sandra. I never was. I moved toward the door. But I am looking for accountability. The parents deserve to know they were manipulated. Nora deserves to know it wasn't her fault nobody came. I'll tell them, she said quietly. All of them. Today. Good. I was almost to the door when she spoke again. That man you're with, Bruce Downey, is it real? I turned back. Does it matter? I'm just... She hesitated. Be careful, Edna. Men like that don't do anything without a reason. You're right, I said. His reason is that he's decent. You should try it sometime. The next stop was my Aunt May's house in Oak Park. She was my mother's sister, the one who'd tried to maintain family connections after my parents had written me off for getting pregnant and divorced. She answered the door with flour on her hands and sympathy in her eyes. I heard you were coming, she said. Sandra called. Warned me you were on a truth-telling tour. Are you going to slam the door in my face? Don't be ridiculous. Come in, I made lemon bars. Her kitchen smelled like citrus and butter, and the childhood I'd mostly forgotten. We sat at her table, the same one where I'd done homework 20 years ago, and she pushed a plate toward me. I'm sorry about the party, she said without preamble. I should have come. Should have questioned the rumors instead of believing them. Why didn't you? She sighed, long and heavy. Because it was easier to stay neutral, to not pick sides between you and the family members who were spreading gossip. I told myself I was being diplomatic. She met my eyes. I was being cowardly. Yeah, I said quietly. You were. Your young man, Bruce. He's serious about you? I think so. I'm serious about him. Good. You deserve someone who shows up. She squeezed my hand. I'm sorry I haven't been that person. I'd like to try if you'll let me. I thought about all the years I'd spent trying to earn back family approval and how much lighter I felt now that I'd stopped caring. Okay, I said. But Aunt May? I'm not asking permission anymore. Not from family, not from anyone. I'm just informing you of decisions I've already made. She smiled, sad but genuine. Your mother would be proud of that, even if she'd never admit it. 2 days later, the Tribune ran a story. Downey family redirects profits to community programs following property controversy. Bruce had handled the blowback from Rook's property, flipped the way he handled everything, with precision and strategy. The moment the scandal broke, he'd gone on offense, press conference, financial transparency, proof that he'd disclosed every zoning issue to Rook's attorneys before the sale. And then he'd done something nobody expected. He'd donated the entire profit from the sale, $18 million, to Chicago public schools for STEM and arts programs. If someone's going to use my name to build a story, he'd told reporters, I'm going to make sure that story ends with children having better opportunities. The narrative shifted overnight. Suddenly, Bruce wasn't the mob boss dumping toxic real estate. He was the philanthropist trying to go legitimate while criminals exploited his good faith. Rook, meanwhile, was scrambling to explain why he'd flipped properties he'd been warned about, why he'd violated his on-camera agreement about targeting families, and why his organization kept showing up in police reports related to witness intimidation. The final nail came at Nora's school fundraiser. It was a small event. Carnival games on the playground, bake sale, raffle for a gift basket. Nora had been so excited, had made me promise we'd go even though security concerns made Marta nervous. We went. Marta and 2 others in plain clothes, Bruce staying back to avoid making it about him. Halfway through, someone released a dozen white doves during the principal's speech. Harmless, but chaotic. Kids shrieking, birds everywhere, the kind of disruption that looked like a prank, but felt like a message. Marta tracked the release point to a teenager who cracked immediately under questioning. Rook's nephew, paid $50 to cause a scene. Testing the boundaries. Seeing if Bruce would retaliate at a school event. Bruce didn't retaliate. He called the principal, explained the situation, and asked if the school would like to press charges for trespassing and disrupting an official function. They did. By evening, the story was everywhere. Criminal organization targets elementary school fundraiser, community rallies in support of Downey protection efforts. Parents who'd been neutral suddenly weren't. The same people who'd ghosted Nora's party showed up to school board meetings demanding better security and praising Bruce's restraint. Rook had tried to make Bruce look weak by forcing him to choose between violence and vulnerability. Instead, Bruce had made Rook look like exactly what he was, a bully who targeted children. That night, Bruce came to the penthouse earlier than usual. He looked tired but satisfied, like he'd won something that mattered. Nora ambushed him at the elevator. Bruce, did you see? The doves were so pretty but also really loud, and one pooped on Mrs. Henderson's head. I heard. He crouched to her level, smiling. You handled it very well. Mommy says we're supposed to stay calm during incidents. She pronounced the word carefully. Is this an incident? It was, but it's over now. He glanced at me over her shoulder. Actually, Nora, can I talk to you about something? In private? My daughter's eyes went huge. Am I in trouble? Opposite of trouble. Promise. They disappeared into the kitchen while I pretended not to be desperately curious. Marta, posted by the elevator, was smirking. You know what this is about, I said. I might. Are you going to tell me? Absolutely not. Some things are between a man and the small, terrifying human he's asking permission from. 5 minutes later, they emerged. Nora was grinning like she'd won the lottery. Bruce looked nervous, which was so unexpected on him that I actually did a double take. Mommy, Nora announced. Bruce asked if he could borrow you forever, and I said yes, but only if we still do cake on Tuesdays because that's our thing. My heart stopped, started, stumbled over itself. Borrow me, I repeated slowly. Nora's word choice, not mine. Bruce's mouth curved. I was slightly more eloquent. Only slightly? Nora stage whispered. What did you actually say? I asked. Bruce met my eyes, and there was no strategy there. No calculation. Just honesty that made my chest ache. I told her I wanted to take the pretend off. That I wanted to be part of her family for real. That I needed her permission before I asked you because she's the most important person in your world, which means she's important in mine. And I said yes. Nora bounced on her toes. But you still have to ask Mommy because she's very particular about choices. I am, I managed, vision blurring. Very particular. I remember. Bruce stepped closer, leaving Nora to bounce near the windows. Edna Kernot, the woman who walked into danger because protecting her daughter mattered more than safety. Who documented 3 years of evidence because hope without strategy is just wishful thinking. Who taught me that real strength isn't about how much force you can bring, but how much you choose not to use. Bruce. I'm not asking tonight, he said quietly. Tonight's just about telling you that I'm going to ask. Soon. When the timing's right and the moment's ours and it's not tangled up in threats and strategy and protection. When will that be? Soon. His hand found mine, warm and steady. I promise. Behind him, Nora had stopped bouncing and was watching us with an expression of intense focus. But there is something I need to tell you, Bruce continued. We're having a small dinner here tomorrow. My inner circle, the people who've been with my family for years. They need to meet you officially, not as the woman I'm protecting, but as someone who matters. Yes. The elevator chimed. Marta's voice. Food delivery, sir. That's dinner. I ordered from that Italian place you like. He squeezed my hand once before releasing it. Nora, can you help me set the table? Can I use the fancy plates? Always. They moved toward the kitchen, already bickering good-naturedly about napkin folding techniques. I stood frozen, trying to process everything that had just happened. Marta appeared at my elbow. He gave her the ring box, she said conversationally. What? The ring box, for safekeeping. She's supposed to give it back to him when the moment's right. Marta's expression was carefully neutral. That child has more power than most of my operatives. He gave my 7-year-old a ring box. He gave your 7-year-old the power to decide when he proposes. Marta's mouth twitched. I've known Bruce Downey for 10 years. I've never seen him give anyone that kind of control. In the kitchen, Nora shrieked with laughter at something Bruce had said. The sound carried through the penthouse like music, like proof that safety could sound like joy if you chose the right people to build it with. Mommy, Nora called. Come see. Bruce says we can have tiramisu for dessert if we eat our vegetables. That's bribery, I called back. That's negotiation, Bruce corrected. I walked toward the kitchen, toward the sound of my daughter's laughter and the man who'd somehow become the answer to questions I hadn't known how to ask. And tucked in Nora's pocket, waiting for a 7-year-old's permission, was a ring box that represented everything I'd stopped letting myself want. Tomorrow I'd meet his family. Soon he'd ask his question. And for the first time in years, I knew exactly what my answer would be. The restaurant looked like a dream someone had exhaled into reality. Bruce had closed it for the evening, the entire space, not just the back room. Soft candles everywhere, their flames reflected in the river beyond the windows. Pastel balloons, but elegant this time, anchored in clusters that looked professionally arranged because they were. White tablecloths, fresh flowers. The kind of setup that whispered this matters in every detail. And people. Everywhere. Nora's entire first-grade class, plus their families. Rosa from the bakery with her husband. Aunt May with a +1 I didn't recognize. Even Sandra, who'd arrived early with an enormous apology card, signed by everyone from the original group chat. Detective Harrow stood near the bar in off-duty clothes, talking easily with Marta about something that made them both laugh. And Bruce's people. The inner circle I'd met at last night's dinner. His attorney Vincent, sharp-eyed and dryly funny. His restaurant manager Gianna, who ran the kitchen with the precision of a general. Marco, who handled logistics and spoke 4 languages. And a dozen others who comprised the framework of the life Bruce was building beyond his family's reputation. "Mommy, this is better than the first party," Nora whispered, clutching my hand. She wore a new dress, pale yellow, her choice, with pockets deep enough for important things like the toy car Bruce had given her and the rock she'd found that looked like a heart. "Much better," I agreed, "because people came this time. Because the right people came this time." I squeezed her hand. "There's a difference." Bruce appeared through the crowd, moving with that same deliberate grace. He wore the deep forest suit from that first night, the one that had made him look like a polite storm. The gold chain caught the candlelight. His eyes found mine across the room and stayed there, the weight of his attention making my skin flush. He stopped in front of us, crouched to Nora's eye level. "You ready for cake?" he asked. "Is it as big as last time?" "Bigger." Her eyes went wide. "How is that even possible?" "Magic," he smiled. "Or excellent bakers. Probably the second thing." She threw her arms around his neck with the easy affection of a child who'd decided he was safe. Bruce caught her automatically, standing with her koala wrapped around him, and something in my chest cracked open. "Go find your friends," he told her gently. "Cake's in 5 minutes." Nora disentangled herself and bolted toward a group of children who were already investigating the dessert table with intense focus. Bruce straightened, adjusting his cuffs, then offered me his hand. "Dance with me before the chaos starts?" The DJ, because of course there was a DJ now, had shifted to something slow and jazzy. Couples were already swaying on the makeshift dance floor. I took his hand. He led me into the space the same way he had that first night, his hand settling at the small of my back, warm through the burgundy dress I'd worn again, because it felt like armor and promise both. "You're wearing the same dress," he observed quietly. "It's the one Nora likes, the one that twirls. It's the one you were wearing when I first saw you." His thumb traced small circles against my spine. When I realized sitting alone at that table was the bravest thing I'd seen anyone do in years. It wasn't brave, it was denial. It was both. We turned slowly, his movements sure and practiced. "You stayed when everyone else left. You set those places and lit those candles because giving up would mean letting them win. They did win. The party was empty. The first attempt was empty." His eyes held mine. "This one isn't." Around us, the room swelled with conversation and laughter. Children playing, adults talking. The kind of noise that meant community, that meant people had chosen to show up. "Bruce, I need to tell you something," he said, "before the cake and the speeches and whatever else happens tonight." My heart kicked. "Okay." That first night, When I asked you to pretend to be my wife, I told myself it was strategy, protection, a way to draw lines and send messages. He pulled me slightly closer. I was lying to myself. What do you mean? I'd been watching you for weeks. At the bakery, in the park with Nora, at the grocery store counting change before you let yourself buy anything. I watched you be strong and tired and scared and determined, and I thought... He paused, jaw tight. I thought she deserves better than what life's giving her. Bruce, let me finish. His hand pressed more firmly against my back. When I walked into that party room and saw you alone with those empty chairs and that little girl's cake waiting for lungs that never came, I didn't intervene because of strategy. I intervened because the idea of you sitting there drowning in other people's cruelty made me want to burn the world down. His voice dropped lower. So I offered you a shield. Told myself it was about principles and rules and protecting civilians. And now? Now I know the truth. His hand came up to my chin, tilting my face toward his the same way he had that first night. Gentle. Asking. Not demanding. I wasn't offering protection. I was asking permission to keep you. The music swelled around us, but I barely heard it past the roaring in my ears. Keep me, I repeated, if you'll let me. His thumb brushed my jaw. Edna Kernot, I asked for pretend that night. But I want the real thing now. I want Tuesday cakes and bakery shifts and every hard conversation. I want to watch you be strong and let me be strong beside you. I want Nora's drawings on my walls and her voice in my house and your face across every breakfast table for the rest of my life. Behind him, I saw Nora pushing through the crowd. She'd retrieved something from her pocket, the small velvet box Bruce had given her yesterday. She stopped at his elbow, breathless and grinning. Now? She whispered. Now, Bruce confirmed. He took the box from her, never breaking eye contact with me. Then he opened it with one hand, the other still at my chin, holding me like I was something precious and breakable. The ring was simple. A single diamond, elegant and understated. The kind of ring that said I see you instead of look at me. I'm not going to kneel, he said quietly. Because we're partners, and partners stand eye to eye. I'm not going to make this perfect, because our story started with empty chairs and borrowed time. But I am going to ask you, clearly and completely, in front of everyone who matters. The music had stopped. I realized dimly that the entire restaurant had gone quiet, everyone watching. Edna, will you marry me? Will you let me take the pretend off and make this real? Will you trust me with forever? I looked at him, at the man who'd claimed me as protection, and became something infinitely more complicated, at the gold chain that caught candlelight, at the stubble that framed his jaw, at the amber eyes that saw past every defense I'd spent years constructing. Then I looked at Nora, who was vibrating with anticipation, hands clasped under her chin like she was watching the finale of her favorite movie. Then at the room full of people who'd shown up, who'd chosen us. Yes, I said, clear and certain. But on one condition. Bruce's mouth curved. Name it. No more hiding. Not from this, not from each other, not from whatever comes next. If we do this, we do it all the way, with eyes open and hearts honest. Deal. He slid the ring onto my finger. Perfect fit. Because of course he'd somehow figured that out. Anything else? Kiss me. I stepped closer. Not because cameras are watching or enemies are circling or strategy demands it. Kiss me because you want to. Because this is real. His smile was devastating. That I can do. He tilted my chin up one more time, and this kiss wasn't like that first almost moment. This kiss was eyes open, deliberate. His mouth on mine was gentle first, asking, then deeper when I answered by fisting my hands in his suit jacket and pulling him closer. The room erupted. Applause, cheering, Nora shrieking, "I helped!" loud enough to be heard in the next county. Someone's child started banging a spoon against a glass. The DJ hit play on something triumphant and orchestral. We broke apart slowly, foreheads touching, breathing the same air. That was real, Bruce murmured. Very real. I was shaking and steady simultaneously. No takebacks now. Never. Nora crashed into both of us, wrapping her arms around our legs. Does this mean Bruce lives with us now, or we live with him? Or do we get two houses? We'll figure it out, I said, running my hand through her hair. Together. But we still do cake on Tuesdays? Always, Bruce promised. He hoisted her up, settling her on his hip with practiced ease. In fact, speaking of cake, Gianna appeared with a wheeled cart, carrying what could only be described as an architectural marvel of sugar and buttercream. 3 tiers, pastel frosting, sugar flowers that looked real enough to pick. 7 candles already lit and waiting. Make a wish, Nora, I said. My daughter, our daughter, I corrected mentally, squeezed her eyes shut. The entire room waited. When she opened her eyes, she didn't blow out the candles immediately. Instead, she looked at Bruce, then at me, then grinned. I already got my wish, she announced, so these are for everybody else. Then she blew with enough force to send wax flying, and in the chaos that followed, in the laughter and the cake cutting, and someone's kid accidentally knocking over a vase, Nora grabbed a handful of frosting and smashed it directly into Bruce's face. The room froze. Bruce stood very still, white buttercream dripping from his jaw, bits of cake in his perfectly styled hair. Then he laughed, full and genuine, the kind of sound I'd never heard from him before. Oh, it's like that? He scooped frosting from his cheek. Bruce, no, I started. Too late. He'd already gotten Nora, who shrieked with delight and retaliated by diving fingers first into the cake. Within seconds, it was chaos. Children and adults both joining the fray, frosting everywhere, someone's husband declaring it the best wedding announcement ever, Detective Harrow shaking his head but smiling. I stood at the edge of it all, watching Bruce laugh with my daughter, our daughter, both of them covered in cake and joy, and thought, this is what protection builds. 3 months later, the Saturday workshops at the bakery had become an institution. 20 kids now, rotating schedules, with a waiting list that stretched into next semester. Rosa had hired 2 additional staff just to manage the program. I stood at the register, processing a donation from a local business, when Marta appeared with Nora in tow. Knight takes bishop, Nora was saying seriously. And that's checkmate because you can't move your king without putting it in danger. Correct. Marta's expression was almost proud. You're learning. Bruce says chess is about seeing 3 moves ahead. Bruce is right. They'd been meeting twice a week for chess lessons. Marta teaching strategy, Nora absorbing it like a sponge and applying it to everything from homework to negotiations about bedtime. How's my favorite student? I asked. Winning, Nora reported. Marta says I'm ruthless. I said you're developing good tactical instincts, Marta corrected. Ruthless was implied. That evening, in Bruce's office at the penthouse, our penthouse now, mine and Nora's things mixed with his until you couldn't tell where one life ended and another began, I found him staring at the rook piece. He'd had it encased in glass, mounted on a small pedestal. It sat on his desk like a trophy, or a warning, or maybe both. Reminder? I asked, sliding my arms around him from behind. Of lines drawn and kept. He covered my hands with his. Rook violated the agreement 3 more times in the first month. Each time I buried him a little deeper. Legal filings, publicity, donation drives that made him look like the villain he is. And now? Now he operates in a smaller sandbox, and every parent in Chicago knows the Downey family funds schools and protection programs. He turned in my arms. You were right. The narrative matters. We were right. I kissed him softly. Partners, remember? Partners. He smiled against my mouth. Forever. Through the office door, I could hear Nora singing something about birthdays and cake. Could smell dinner cooking. Bruce had insisted on learning to make my favorite pasta. Had taken lessons from Gianna until he got it right. The Rook sat locked in glass, powerless. The city stretched out beyond the windows, full of families choosing to show up, of children learning they were worth protecting, of Tuesday cakes and Saturday workshops, and all the small ways that safety became home. And in the center of it all, a woman who'd learned that hope wasn't just a muscle you exercised. Sometimes it was a man who asked you to pretend, then spent forever making it real. Sometimes it was a daughter who held the ring box and knew exactly when to give it back. Sometimes it was simply choosing, eyes open, heart honest, to step into the light and trust that someone would be there to meet you. I chose Bruce. He chose me. And every day after, we chose each other again. No more pretending. Just promises kept.